Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. You put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible. His book is called Leaving 27th Street, Breaking the Chain. If you're listening out there and you do big movies, this right here will be a great movie. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. And I don't know why he said breaking the chain, because he broke many chains in this book. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah. I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and I say this all the time because it's just the truth. I get to sit down and have conversations with some of the most inspiring and intriguing people on the planet. Today is no exception. I can't wait to talk to this guy. It's going to be so good. Preparing for this has been like an emotional thing for me because his story is so wonderful. But before we get into him, let me make sure if you're listening for the first time, I want you to give us a thumbs up, a share. And if you're a returning listener, you know what to do. Help somebody else get this by sharing it, liking it, moving it forward. Okay, I got that out of the way. Our guest today is the author of a remarkable book. I'm just telling you guys right now, I get to read books. I have this thing about if you agree to be on the podcast and you have a book or something, I have to read it and go through it before I talk to you. And this book right here, if you could see it, this book is filled with Post-its and notes and highlights. And I've taken half of them out so I could have something to talk about today on a piece of paper. His book is called Leaving 27th Street, Breaking the Chain. His name is Phillip Spencer. It's a memoir that he wrote. You need to get the book. That's all I'm telling you. It's a true American story of family, faith, fatherhood, and fortune. It's a quick read. It's a great read. And I don't know why he said breaking the chain, because he broke many chains in this book. Oh my gosh. I was waiting for one chain and he just kept breaking chains after chain. And that's what makes this book special. I did tell him after I read it, The Pursuit of Happiness was a movie that came out years ago about someone's journey to success. And I know Phil's not interested in that, but if you're listening out there and you do big movies and everything, this right here will be a great movie. And just give me a little credit that I told you that it'd be okay. I mentioned this already, that he's an author. The thing that he's most proud of, and you pick this up in his book, is being a father and a husband. He's been married to Chandra for 30 years. He's got 4 children. We're going to talk about that. He's a person of faith. He shares his faith in the marketplace, at home, at church. He's a Christian. He became a Christian in his 30s. He's led Bible studies for over 20 years. To say he's a successful businessman probably is not even close to the words that we could use for the things he's accomplished in that space. He has held several positions in telecom and financial services. He began partnering in the 2000s, I believe it was, with some private equity firms to buy, grow, and eventually sell broadband and telecom businesses. That has gone to over $3 billion at this point. He's a philanthropist. I think he's an expert in leadership in terms of how to build a successful team. I want to make sure we talk about some of those concepts that I gleaned from his book today and how to make everybody win and that's on your team. He's got degrees in finance and economics. He's originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are always proud of our own. And it's just great to have Phil on the podcast. So, Phil, welcome to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast.
Thanks, David. And I'm happy to be here, excited to be here. Hopefully we can share some wisdom with someone out there that can pick up some nuggets along the way. So,
hey, let's begin. I want to go to childhood, and you could give us some of the background. What I don't want to do is give away the book because I want people to go buy the book, but I want to just talk about a few things that stood out to me. Talk about your childhood a little bit, and also your mom and dad. I think that how they met each other and everything is just, you start reading that, and that's one of the first things you start reading. Oh my God, this is amazing. So let's get us going on that.
My parents, my dad's from Birmingham, Alabama. He's raised by his grandparents. And finished high school. He was a good student in high school, went to Morehouse for a year and ran out of cash like many of us have done when we're in school. Joined the Air Force with hopes of getting a GI Bill and going back to school when he got. So joined the Air Force, went to Texas for boot camp, and then they sent him over to London, England, to an Air Force facility in London. My mom, total flipped script, was born in a little tiny country in Ireland. And who would have thought, right? Think about it. You go, okay. And they were born a week apart. So think about this. Okay, I got this little baby being born in this little country town in Ireland. And I'm talking about, I went to visit one time, and when you go visit the town she's from today, if I blindfolded you and unblindfolded you, you said, man, we're back in the 1800s. So it's that old. They still hang the meat and hang the chickens in the window, and you walk by and you get them. So anyway, mom was born there, 10, 11 kids, had to send her to live with her aunt and right outside of London. And lo and behold, my dad and mom meet in this West Indian that was big with the Harry Belafonte and the whole West Indian the calypso music. And they met in one of those dance halls, got married. And I quickly fast forward, left, got married, came back to Detroit, Michigan, in the height of the civil rights, all that stuff going on. So you got this couple, man, in inner city Detroit, and moved in with my grandmother, who was from Alabama. My mom quickly adapted to basically inner city life, Black inner city life, gated inner city life in America. And so learned how to cook and talk and walk and eat, and from my grandmother, and the language, the whole thing. Dad was nervous, moved to Milwaukee. My oldest brother was born in London, second one in Detroit. I was born in Milwaukee. But basically, when we got to Milwaukee, Dad took off. I don't know what happened. I was a tiny 2, 3-year-old kid. My brother was 6, brother was 4. I could have been 2 or 3, and my mom was pregnant. Dad took off to California and never came back to Milwaukee. So mom just had to basically figure it out from that point forward. So we're on 21st and Hopkins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right across the street from the Golden Chicken. And so mom got a job in the battery plant at Johnson Controls on the east side of Milwaukee, and raised the 4 of us in inner city Milwaukee. So that was the start of my childhood.
You do mention in your bio that you came from growing up in a single family home, and your mom being an immigrant and from Ireland and having to really make adjustments to survive in a time when interracial marriages and the like was not smiled upon. It was frowned upon. We're going to talk about some of the things you learned from her. One of them that I think is her work ethic. You talk about the fact that she always had a job or 2 and made sure that you guys had what you needed, even though we're going to get into some of your entrepreneurial experiences. We talk about a lot here on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, about the journey to going from a place of difficulty to a place of success and what purpose really means. One of the things that I believe is that no one is meant to make the journey alone, that there's always people that are appointed to you, that are assigned to you specifically to help you get to where you need to go. Here you are, single mom, single white mom. At that, your dad's gone, no role models, no one to really help you out. But you did have a babysitter named Ida. And talk a little bit about Ida, what she meant for you as you began to develop into a young man.
Sure. So you're right. So first of all, my mom, she literally delivered my youngest brother, and the following week or following month was in that battery factory and stayed for 30 years. Can you imagine? Think about this. Single parent, you're in the quote unquote in the hood, the only white person to be found anywhere in proximity. You're basically totally in the Black inner city culture. And we were in part of that, and we were all part of that. And for my brothers and I, it was no big deal. We were just part of it. We were just light-skinned Black folks just like many other of our neighbors in the neighborhood. So we didn't get into, you read about my racial identity and I'm confused. We had none of that. Because it was just our friends who were Black. My mom's boyfriends were Black. People that came to visit was Black. I'm not kidding, man. Literally, she was probably the only white person we knew. And I don't want to get disparaging, but she would use the same language as all the other moms. So when you went over to your buddy's house and mom came home and said, I'm sick and tired or whatever, mom used she was just remember, she's 21, right, when she gets here. So she's now in her maybe 30 at this point. So anyway, so she worked. So we always had a work ethic, but she had to have someone with us sometimes. So we had a babysitter that came, but she would leave. My mom worked second shift, 3 to midnight. The babysitter would come right around 2:30ish, right when she had to leave and we were getting home from school. But she would leave before mom got home at midnight. And so for me, and then by this time, just frankly, we just getting caught up in all of the stuff that's going on, unfortunately, drugs, alcohol, just all of the issues that kind of environment can offer you, frankly. And so all of us were involved in some of that stuff we shouldn't have been involved in. My older brother more so than the younger ones. We had a babysitter, her name was Ida, and the way it worked is it was a government program. Working moms will help you with a babysitter. We'll subsidize, so you pay a portion, we'll pay a portion, and you have somebody to take care of the kids while you go to work. And mom was always going to work. There was short times where we had food stamps and whatever, but basically she worked all the time. So there was no gap other than an unemployed, then a layoff, it's a 3-week layoff or 6 week. Other than that, she worked. And so we just got subsidized. So one of the things we got was a subsidized babysitter. Short African-American woman, little afro. And I don't know to this day, I don't know where she got her money. She didn't have a job other than babysitting for us. Her husband was a former alcoholic who she literally cleaned up. He didn't have a quote unquote job, but she had a beautiful home on the east side of Milwaukee. She drove a nice Cadillac and a brand new Cadillac convertible. I remember it was like yesterday it was green. She would come and my brothers would be out running around, but I would literally sit there with Ida on the couch from when I'd run home from school to sit with her. She always had stories. She was a former dancer. She danced in one of the clubs owned by Al Capone. She cooked in a restaurant, so she was a great cook. So I would just sit there, man, and listen to all these inspiring stories that she would offer. And it was almost like I was in a short-term fantasy where she took you away from all the stuff that's going outside. And she just spoke into me, you can do this, you can do that. And it wasn't the teacher one, you can do great things. She's just telling you stories and you're just sucking this stuff in. She's telling me about time in Chicago. At this point, I've never left Milwaukee. I've never been to Chicago. I've never been anywhere. So we stayed in our little circle other than to visit my dad's mom in Detroit. So anyway, she spoke into me and she did it in a way that just shared stories. And she carried a pistol in her purse, a little silver 22 and a white pearl handle. If it got too much ruckus out front, or if kids or people got a little rougher than they needed to, and she pulled out the pistol. And then one story, and we can move on from Maya, that I'll share is I remember I used to spend, I would guess, most of her pay on us. She'd buy me bikes. She'd buy me clothes. She'd take us out to dinner. She'd take us to the state fair. She'd take us to her home and spend the night. And she couldn't have been making but $4 or $5 an hour back then. And she was spending that on us. And I remember she bought me a bike. Man, I was excited about the bike. It had the little things on the handlebars. It had the little clicker noise that it made in spokes. And me and my 3 buddies are on our bikes. Milwaukee police pull us over. Said, you kids stole these bikes. We had not stole these bikes. So she bought me the bike. They took the bikes, put them in the police wagon, said, you're thieves. No question, nothing. Just get off the bikes. You stole them. No investigation. No, where'd you get this bike? We're just assuming you stole them. But that was just common practice back then. It was crazier than it is now. But anyway, took the bikes, drove away to the police station. Man, Ida was told Ida she was not having that. She popped me in her Cadillac, drove up to the local police station, charged in there like she was in charge. I bought that bike. You go get that bike. Captain went back there and got the bike and brought it out to me. And she got back in her Cadillac, drove back to my house, and I rode my bike back home. So I had an advocate. The other 3 guys that never got their bikes back. And I asked her why they always did this. She said they just take our bikes and take them home, give them to their kids. And it's just the way it was. Fortunately, I got my bike back. Unfortunately, my 3 buddies did not get their bike back. For several years, just speaking into me, advocating for me. My mom's at work, right? So she basically was doing a lot of stuff, telling me the importance of education, having me dream, telling me stories. So she was And sometimes you don't think about this stuff though, right? But it's 40 years ago, 50 years. I can still remember sitting on the couch talking to that woman. She was speaking things into me that were encouraging me in a monumental way, even though she probably didn't know it and I didn't know it either. But yeah, she was definitely an angel, a guardian angel, critical time.
You use the word advocate, and that really stands out, and how important that was for you to have, and to have a situation where you saw something that was wrongly done to you got corrected, and that there was a way to get that thing right. And I think that's really important. The more I think about this, you're right. She was an angel. This was a divine appointment. What you're saying that she did for you with the means that she apparently had, it just doesn't add up.
Right.
It's really, but she had that pistol and she was not playing. Before I get to education, because I know it's really important to you, you've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And if I remember reading in the book, your family, you've got entrepreneurs throughout your family, your dad's side and other things, and you always were looking to make a buck.
That's right.
You were spared a number of times, and I'll let people read the book to really get into it. But I want to talk about your brother, because I think he was important to your success. And he was the one that ended up in jail. But you still were out there hustling. You still had the game, but you didn't want to have to do any incarceration or anything like that. Talk a little bit about the importance of your brother and what made you begin to see things a little differently.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I was, and I don't know, this obviously came from my mother. She never sat down and said, you need to get a job. But she never did that. She just, as a kid, you go, okay, she pops up. She goes to work. She gets home at midnight. She gets a paycheck every Friday. I'm processing this as a kid, right? And so it was innate in me. I worked. I shoveled snow. I cut grass. I collected cans. I collected bottles. Back then it was bottles. You got 5 cents for a bottle. I would take bottles. I'd wash them out. I'd take them to Kohl's. You got 5 cents a bottle. I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old. I would always focus literally daily on how am I going to make a buck. And the weird thing about it is I never spent a nickel. I saved every penny. I didn't buy the Pro Kids. I didn't buy the Converses. I didn't buy the shoes. I literally saved everything.
Where did that come from?
Part of it might have started back then. There was a bank right down the street from us on Fond du Lac and 28th and Fond du Lac called North Milwaukee State Bank. And you would go in, there was no computers and stuff. You would take a passbook and then they would print your deposit. So they'd say deposit $18.60 balance, and they'd stick it in this thing and it would print it out and then hand you the book back. And that's how you knew how much money you had in this book. And I would literally go in there and open an account. I think I opened an account with $5. And then I would literally go put $1.25, $1.73, $2.67, $4.87. And I would take the passbook and I'd just watch it grow. $4, $9, $15, $28. And every day I would take my earnings for the day and I'd take them up to the bank. I don't care if it was $3.87. I'd take my $3.87. They knew me in the bank. I'm a little 10-year-old walking in and change, no dollars, and just flopping it on the table. And I think that's what started, just watching it grow. And I never took anything out, not one single withdrawal ever, only deposits. And just watching that girl, and I remember the milestones, right? When you got to $100, now you had 3 digits on there. And I got to $500. I got to $1,000. So I think the saving, just enthusiasm of watching that number on that passbook get bigger and bigger. Like I said, I wasn't saving for anything. I wasn't going to go buy any clothes. I wasn't going to go take a trip. I was just in this saving thing. So I think it really started from, number one, work ethic, and 2, just watching that saving account grow. So it was always important to me. And to this day, I don't have any need financially whatsoever. I have everything I would ever need, ever want. And frankly, everything I earn going forward, someone else is going to get in an inheritance. But I still, now where I have no financial concerns, I still watch. I've become more giving, which is thankfully. But a quick example, I was going to get some deodorant. It was $3 and something at CVS, and I can buy a package of that same deodorant at Costco. And I do the math. I get 10 things of deodorant, and it comes out to only $2.99 instead of $3.69. I was not buying, and this is recent, I'm not buying that deodorant. Now that 69 cents makes no difference in my life whatsoever, will never make any difference. But I said, nope, I'm going to wait and I'm going to go to Costco. So it's just something that's been innate it's just been part of that. I think it started with that passbook account, frankly.
That's amazing because some of these things that were in you, obviously they stayed in you for a reason because it has helped put you in the position that you're in now. We're going to talk about your brother's situation and how that impacted you. And then I want to get to your high school. And because we all had someone in high school that helped us to try to get there. For those who got out of the situation that you were in and I was in as a child, there was a teacher, there was a pastor, there was a doctor, there was somebody that encouraged us to move forward in an academic arena. And for you, you had some people like that. So we were talking about money and saving. And so you were taking all your side hustle money, whether it was bottles, the albums, that was hilarious to me. But boy, that whole album business that you had, I thought it was the riskiest thing in the world. But you really understood arbitrage, for lack of a better word. You knew that if you paid 7 cents and you could sell it for 8 cents, you made a penny. And you got that early on.
But you're right. I was hustling, shoveling snow, taking back bottles. And then I'll just put it out there. I just started doing the illegal stuff. And so and my brother at this point was involved in several illegal things, breaking, entering, burglary, drugs, curfew violations. My mom would always, I'm not sure why, she would always take me to go visit my brother in prison. And you had the phones, right? You had the glass and you talked through the glass. And we try to figure out a bail. Now, you got to remember, right? She's 6th grade education, worked at this battery factory. Where the heck she's going to get $500 to bail him out of jail, right? Or $1,000 to bail him out of jail. So I would always go to the prison with her, and she would talk to him on the phone. And I would just watch the glass and look behind the glass. And man, just men pounding on top of each other. My brother explaining they're eating green bologna and black coffee. And it's loud. You got to cling to all these doors to get to the visit part. And this wasn't sit-down visitation. This through the glass that you pick up with the side of the phone. And I remember just sitting there watching. The first few visits, I didn't think much of it. But as I got older, I would just think to myself, man, no way am I going in that cage like that. I am not going to do it. I'm not built for that. And just the thought of losing my freedom and being piled up like that was something that I couldn't imagine. And I started getting this thing. I can't do that. I cannot do that. I cannot do that. But anyway, so I would mix my legal earnings with illegal. And I will use 2 examples. The biggest ones were theft. So the first one was we would steal meat. I wouldn't steal meat. I'd send my buddy in and he would steal meat and then load it in the trunk of my car. I was always the lookout guy, watch out guy. And then we would take the meat, pop the trunk, and then sell it. We go to bars. There was this bar on the corner that was known. It's called the Cobra Club. If you wanted anything stolen, you just go to the Cobra Club. You wanted a bike, you wanted a meat, you wanted food, anything you wanted stolen, you just go to you wanted hubcaps, tires, you just go to Cobra Club, and somebody was out there selling it. So we would steal meat. And then to your point, we got to the albums. And so albums, LPs, they were the size of a large box, but they were small and thin. And so some of your listeners will know and some won't. Just go Google album and you'll see what it looks like. And so I had another buddy, he would put on a backpack and then a huge overcoat. He would go into the album store, grab 4 or 5 stack of albums, put them in the backpack, and then he would load. So he'd load 20 total. He'd put the backpack back on, put the coat over him, walk out, bring it out to my car that I had bought, put the albums in my car. Again, I would go in the store with him. I'd distract the clerks while he would steal the albums. I'd watch in the car. And we do this every Saturday. And we'd go to 5 or 6 different stores. He'd hit each door twice. I'm the watch out guy. I'm the driver. I'm distracting the clerk. And we would dump the albums in the trunk of my car. We make 4 or 5 stops. We'd start about 11 a.m., wrap up about 3. And then in the inner city, There was no big album stores. There was record shops. So you had every little neighborhood had a record store, a record shop. And you'd go in and buy your Commodore's album, and your Earth, Wind and Fire album, your whatever. And we would sell the albums for $3 each to the local small record stores. And so we were their supply chain every Saturday. And we would make a killing. We'd still probably 200 albums because you could get 20 at a time. You make 2 or 3 stops per location. We get 200 albums, and at $3 a pop, $600, 300 for him, 300 for me. We do it every Saturday like clockwork. The store, if there were cell phones back then, they'd call us looking for their next shipment, and we would get the hottest album. So we wouldn't get the off-brand albums. We'd get the hottest albums. So we knew the record stores would have to buy the Earth, Wind and Fires, the Commodores, the Funkadelics, the Parliaments, the all of those albums. And so we would sell the albums. And then after doing this pretty much every week, we're at one store, we're hitting it hard. The trunk is packed with albums. He's hitting this one store 3-4 times because there's only one clerk in the store. It's at Capitol Court Mall right there on Fond du Lac. And it's a Music Land right there. And I can remember that. I can't believe I still remember that. And he hit the store and he kept coming out, man, it's easy. There's just one clerk. It's right before close, right? So there's only one guy in there, or it's close to close. And so he goes in and he keeps going, and I'm like getting nervous. And I look over as he goes back in, there's a guy looking over at me. And I didn't think anything of it. He wasn't a security guard. He was dressed in plain clothes. And so I got in the car and drove it just across the street to the McDonald's. And I said, okay, I'm going to leave the car here. Because I didn't know. I thought the guy was, maybe he's going to go tell security. They're going to come pop the trunk. Whoa, I got thousands of dollars worth of albums in my car. I'm going to be arrested and be thrown in jail and be sitting there with my brother, next to my brother, talking to my mom on the phone going, okay, I said I was going to never be here, and here I am. And I moved the car across the street to McDonald's. I went back to the Music Land, to the mall, and tell my buddy, hey, I moved the car across the street because I saw this guy watching, and I was getting kind of nervous. And as I'm walking literally through the parking lot to go tell him, security van pulls up, security guard jumps out. The guy that was looking at me said, that's him. They grabbed me, put me in the security van, take me into the mall, take me into the security room, handcuff me to a table and say, where's that stolen albums? You're stealing albums. I'm saying, no, I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about. They interrogate me. I insist I know nothing about the albums. I'm just here. I don't know what you're talking about. They check my pockets and pull out the car keys. And they go, where's the car? And I said, I don't own a car. Then why would you have car keys if you don't own a car? Hey, man, everybody knows you jingle your keys and you look cool, especially back in the 80s, 70s. You always jingled your keys like you had. You'd even clip the keys so people knew you had a car. I said, I really don't have a car. It's just a way for me to impress girls, friends, that I have a car when I really don't. So he left and they took the handcuffs out. They took me out of the security room, put me in the van, and started driving around the parking lot. And the guy pointed, that's where the car was. It was right here. It was right here. So he's telling me I was right here. I'm like, okay, where is it? And so they're literally driving around the whole Capitol Court parking lot trying to find my car that, thank goodness, I had parked across the street at the McDonald's. So he couldn't find the car. Make a long story stop. I go back in. He re-handcuffs me. He says, you're lying. You got the albums. I said, look, I don't have any albums. And I finally hear the cop tell the security guard, look, we got no car. We got no albums. I can't just keep this kid. At some point, we got to either charge him or let him go. I got no evidence. It's just your word against him with no merchandise, nothing. I can't arrest him on nothing. So they let me go. Here you go. Here's your keys back. Now, they think, obviously, I'm going to be dumb enough. I'm going to go back to my car. And they're going to go, pa-ha, there he is. So they let me go, but they're following me to see if I go back to my car. I don't go back to the car. I get on the city bus, take the city bus back to my neighborhood. I go to my buddy's house that was actually in there stealing albums. I'm thinking they got him. I go to his home. He says, they didn't catch me. I started running. I let the albums go so I could run faster, and they couldn't catch me, and I got away. So we're high-fiving. We get back on the bus, go get the car, to get the albums, to go drop them at our quote-unquote clients. And I'm not kidding. This may sound like the craziest thing in the world, but it's absolutely true. As I'm sitting here, we get the car, we head to sell albums to the other smaller record store. The cops that have me chained up to the desk pull up literally next to me at a red light to go back to the police station on 35th and Fond du Lac. I'm going down Fond du Lac. They stopped to make that left to go to the police station right there on 35th. They are sitting next to me, car to car. All they got to do is look over. That's the kid I just had in the security room for an hour. Get out of the car, pop the trunk, bam, albums, I'm arrested, felony convicted, in prison, arrested. And who knows, my whole life would have changed after that, right? Yeah, but it didn't. So that day, I told my buddy, no more album deals for me. This is it. We're selling these. I'm out of the album business. But I'm still dibbling and dabbling in some little side stuff. I can't get it out of my system. And then I'm at Washington High School, public high school in Milwaukee, not doing well at the time, smoking weed, drinking, skipping school, still smart. But the teacher, African-American teacher, math teacher, she comes up to me and she says, look, you're a smart kid. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? She just asked, what are you going to do? And I'm like, what do you mean what I'm going to do? Don't tell me what to do. I'll do what I want to do. So she literally shakes her head, walks away, and as if to say, I tried. This kid just don't get it. And man, she walked away from me that moment. And I literally had a bubble come out of my head like the cartoons. And it was a picture of me literally in that jail, in that prison. And I knew what she was saying. What are you going to do? Are you going to do something, or are you going to keep doing what you're doing? It's almost like she knew what I was doing outside of school. That day, I said, that's it. Transferred to an all-boys Jesuit high school and said, I'm focusing on education. Education is going to be my new quote-unquote hustle. I'm going to use education to advance myself, my career, my financial position, and get out of this whole crime business. And it was her one time saying that to me for 15 seconds. She stopped me as I was leaving the class because I always sat in the back. So I was always the last one out. And I sat in the back so I didn't have to pay attention. I can look out the window. And so I was always the last one out. She grabbed me, and as I was walking out of class, looked me eye to eye, asked that question. And I can remember it. I'm thinking about it. I was a teenager, and I can remember her face that one time just like it was yesterday. And that was a life-changing moment. So thank goodness she cared enough. But if you asked her right now, she'd probably say, that fool's in jail somewhere.
We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, man, as I listened to you tell these events, there was a hand of grace and covering over your life. And to have your teacher just say that one thing to you, that one, and for our listeners who are dealing with young people that are having struggles and trying to figure things out, your one word can change the course of their life. So when we come back, we're going to pick it up from here. You went to Marquette High School. You were in my brother's class. I didn't really know you in high school per se. And you went on to college and you did well and all that. And we're going to pick it up there and then go into some of your professional things that you've done. And most importantly, meeting your wife. We'll be right back on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, with our guest, Phillip Spencer, right after this.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, along with our guest, Phil Spencer. We left, he was just talking about transferring from a public school into a private Jesuit high school here in Milwaukee. You left Washington High School, where you were an A student, but you got to Marquette High School and really began to struggle to get to the next level. But the key was you persevered and you never gave up. You didn't quit with that. I want to fast forward to Marquette University, where you went to college. And there was another person there, Curtis Craig, that you mentioned, who really helped you to find your way. You began to study business, of all things, when you got there, because you were a businessman. Right. When we were off the mic, we talked about you developed the supply chain, and didn't know what that was. So you get to college and you begin to study business, and I don't know if you did it or not, but it probably began to put names on things that you had already been a part of. And now you were able to legally begin to put together your next steps.
I didn't go to the dances. I didn't go to I didn't pledge. I wasn't in a fraternity. I had friends that were Kappas and Qs. But man, I'm here to get education. I'm not trying to waste 4 years I'm here. I got to get paid. I got to get back to my earnings. I got to do it legally. And shame on me if I'm going to waste the time jacking around in school. So I didn't go to meet new people, to get the college experience. I'm like, I got to get through this thing as quickly as I can. I got through in 4 years. I particularly, ironically, excelled in my finance, economics, and business classes more than any of the other classes, just because I was so enamored with, oh, this is how that works. Because me, right, with the albums, I'm stealing the albums, selling them at 3, they're selling them at 6. That's the margin. Oh, that's what margin is. That's what gross margin is. Oh, so I had gross margin going back there. And so put it all into reality for me. Supply chain, right? Supply and demand. Okay, I got that. If there's more people demanding than there are supply, the price is going to be higher. If there's less demand, the price is going to be lower. Price elasticity. All that stuff was like, okay, there's words for this stuff that I didn't even know. There was an African-American man that was head of the internal audit department. He was Curtis Craig. He posted a position for an intern. I applied. He hired 2 interns, me and one other young lady. Curtis Craig was married. He was from Detroit. He had an MBA from Wisconsin. He had undergrad, but he was smart, intelligent, bright, but he also had a beautiful family. He had 2 young sons. He had a wife that was from Georgia. So he had that whole Southern roots kind of thing with her. But he also could relate to me from an inner city Black man perspective. He could talk the talk, walk the walk. So the nice thing about Curtis, right, he can go into the senior vice president of finance office and articulate. We could go down to 27th and Clark, and he could fit right in. I love that he was able to maneuver, quote unquote, these 2 worlds. And I wasn't able to do that. I was still stuck on, I remember in class, my English was still pretty bad. When I got to Marquette, they found my reading and writing to be below. They made me take remedial reading and writing. My speech was all out of whack. When I was writing papers, I couldn't get the language right. So I'd take it to a tutor and she'd mark it all up with a red pen and I'd rewrite it. Curtis had mastered these 2 things. And so I spent a lot of time with him in the office, but I also spent a lot of time with him at home. So he'd invite me to his home. I met his wife, met his kids. And so I said, wow, man, this is what a Black family looks like, right? Husband, wife, kids, stable, working dad. Mom worked part-time, but was home with the kids most of the time. She was from the South, so she still had a lot of the Southern traditions. And I was like, wow. So this is the first time I saw intact Black family, professional man, professional wife, great kids, great home environment. And I just wasn't used to it. Wasn't nobody. It was just my mom. She wasn't there, and she didn't get remarried during that time when we were kids. She dated, had boyfriends for a year or 6 months kind of thing, just like any other young woman would. But this is the first time I saw structure, and I said, okay, man, I started wanting that too, not just the finance and the money and the job and the career, but man, I wanted a family like that. Curtis also spoke into me. He did sit me down and said, look, you need to do this. You need to be careful. You need to watch your grades. You need to know how to maneuver in these 2 worlds. This is how you do it. This is how you don't have to give up your identity, but you got to be this. You got to be that. You got to be professional. In my work, he'd go back and say, no, rewrite this. It's not right. He'd reprimand me. He'd chastise me in an encouraging kind of way. He demanded excellence. I got to hand this in to my boss and read that 3 times. I need you to edit it. So anyway, Curtis provided the professional piece, the education piece, and the family piece. And Curtis and I are still friends. We still keep in touch. I talked to him 2 weeks ago, and he was that bridge. And frankly, he kept me, because every once in a while I'd slip back and go back to my own neighborhood and find myself getting back into that same stuff. And Curtis would always yank me back and go, hey, just be careful. Let's be careful. And ironically, senior year working with Curtis, my oldest brother, got involved with a crime that resulted in someone being murdered. And I went to visit him when he was charged with that murder. And this is at the same time I'm having this Curtis Craig relationship. And after that time with Curtis and visiting him with that serious charge, not only did I eliminated even the smallest, littlest. If I went to McDonald's and they gave you the cup, I didn't try to get the extra drink. I was scared straight. Anything criminal was gone. I literally mimicked Curtis in terms of the choice of my wife and how I looked for a wife and who I ended up marrying. And it was based on the type of woman I was looking for. I wanted to duplicate what Curtis had.
So this, again, just the people that have been in your life, it continues to amaze me. And they're so on point, but you also you listened to them and you saw things in them that were attractive. For many people don't understand, if you had not seen a Black family intact your whole life, and then you see it and you see the beauty of it. You see the splendor of it, because all you saw before was things that were fractured. And now you see something whole. And that helped to also motivate you to want to be like that, because you had this internal struggle going on. You knew you didn't want to go down that path, but you didn't have an option. You did not have something different that you could go toward. And this is what Curtis did. He gave you a full-blown, this is a whole different way you can live, son. And you were able to break that chain. That's another chain that you broke at that point. So you finish college, you get a job. I remember you were with the Big Blue and you didn't have a suit. Because you don't think about these things. You were so focused on getting an education. And I know you didn't have any extra money in college because whatever you had to eat and do different things. You don't have a suit, you're not shaved, and you had to learn at that point what it meant to be a businessman and why you needed to look like everybody else at that time. What was that like for you to just, I don't want to use the word assimilate because I don't think that's a fair word, but you get there and in order for you to have a chance, you can't be standing out like that.
And you remember now, this is the mid-'80s. Weren't a lot of, frank, in corporate. There's just no Black folks, right? It was just pretty much all white men. At that time, they were just starting to diversify a little bit. They had a few women, a few African-American, Hispanic, but it was basically pretty much an all-white culture. And with IBM, it was a simulation. They demanded blue suit, white shirt, red tie, Allen Edmond wingtip shoes, clean shave. That's how we want you to look in front of our customers. No sport coat, no different color shirts, white starch suit, not sport coat pants,
right?
Not polo. There was no business casual. There was no business casual day. It was 7 days a week, 365, blue suit, gray suit. That was it. And that's the way we roll. And I came to work first day, blue blazer, gold buttons, gray pants, Stacey Adams shiny shoes. Boss man literally pulled me in and said, look around. Come on, stand out here, look around. Look at everybody else. Look how they're dressed specifically. And the shirts were the starched shirt, no wrinkles, no starched shirts. And I'm like, yeah. And he sent me home. I said, I don't have any money for that. And he said, I'm going to go down to HR. We're going to give you $750 cash advance on your first paycheck. We're going to take $50 a paycheck out until you pay us back. And this is what you're going to look for. And they gave me Gimbel's, Boston store, a couple other locations. That's where you can go. I don't know if there was a Brooks Brothers. I probably couldn't afford that.
It was Gimbel's in Boston store.
Right. And I got my blue suit. It's funny. He said, do you like cuffs? I said, yes. Put cuffs in the pants, put cuff the pants. And I got my blue suit, got a couple white shirts, a couple ties. And then next paycheck, I bought me another one. And it's funny, man, because I dressed like that well into the 90s when people were business casual. I still wore my blue suit. Even when I started my own business, I went in with blue suit, white shirt. I did that well into even after the shift in the 90s, I was still suit, tie, IBM down.
You know what? As crazy as it was, and people would probably push back against that today, it did give you a foundation for where you were headed. And he didn't mean anything. You had a blue blazer and some trousers, and you were business casual.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't business excellent. Yeah. And in their eyes. And that's what you needed to do. You left there, you did some stuff in the financial markets, which I'll let the people read about. And then you start dabbling in telecom and broadband, which forever changed your life from a financial standpoint, including meeting your wife. So I want to see how we can tie all this together. You were with AT&T at the time, and you found a loophole. And it just was so consistent. When I read it, I was like, of course he's going to find a loophole and make some money doing this. So I'm like, why wouldn't he? And it was legal. And you branched out on your own, and you were saying you can get the same service at a cheaper price, and blah, 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 blah. And you began to be really successful. And thus began the journey down broadband and telecom, which in that space, you are well known. You mentioned how Curtis Craig impacted you finding your wife, Chandra. Let's talk about finding your wife, because we talk about that and you moved to Atlanta and do other things. We'll get into some of the private equity things that you did with your business, but finding your wife, business was the first thing that was important to you. But then family start to supersede that as you got more mature, and finding a wife and having a family and being a family man became more important to you. So let's talk about Chandra.
So to your point, I'll roll in the AT&T because it ties it all together. So I got a job with AT&T. They deregulated AT&T. They had volume discounts. So they allowed bigger businesses. The more long distance calls you made, the bigger discount you got. So if you made 1,000 minutes worth of call, you got one rate. If you made 50,000 minutes, you got a lower rate. If you made 100,000 minutes, you got a lower rate. More long distance you use, the lower rate you got. So if I was a small business guy doing 100 minutes a month, I was paying full boat, right? I didn't qualify for any discounts. If I was General Motors doing hundreds of thousands of minutes a month, I was getting huge discounts. I was working for AT&T. I quit. I signed a contract to be a huge General Motors type user. I'm going to do hundreds of thousands of minutes per month. So I want the 100,000 minute rate. And they go, what are you talking about? You're a one-man operation. You got nothing. I said, don't worry about it. Sign me up. And what I did is I got on the phone. I just started calling every small business. Cook's Enterprises. You're paying 30 cents a minute. How would you like to pay 20 cents a minute? And my biggest issue was people thought it was a scam. This couldn't possibly be true. But let me sum it up. Basically, aggregated a whole bunch of small businesses so that we became a big business and delivered the hundreds of thousands of minutes a month. So instead of paying 30 cents, I was paying, say, 12 cents. I was charging the small business 20 cents, which he was happy, right? Because he was paying 30, now he's paying 20. I'm paying 14. I'm keeping the 6 cents difference between the 14 and the 20. All my small business owners were happy. I'm happy because I'm keeping the delta. And AT&T is getting hundreds of minutes a month, millions of minutes of long distance. Yeah. So I'm running this business. I'm calling, I'm signing up business, start hiring people to call. We got 8 people on the phone calling, and our volume is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're getting bigger and bigger discounts, and my margin is getting bigger, right? Because I'm keeping the difference. And then I'm lowering my customers' rates to keep them happy, and then I'm getting lower rates. And so we're basically selling albums, right? But we're selling long distance. I got a buddy from college. He says, hey, you need to come down to Atlanta. It's the Black Mecca, and you can do much better and grow your business. So I come down, visit a couple times, open an office, and I'll take you to how I met my wife. So we have an office party. And one of the young ladies that's working for us is a senior in college. She's our data entry clerk. So when the orders come in, she puts them into the computer, sends them to AT&T. So that phone number, those set of phone numbers now qualify for the discount. I said, we're having an office party. Why don't you come over Friday night, blah, 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 blah. She says, I'll be there. She comes in to work that Friday, said, I'm not coming tonight. My sister and her roommate are coming from their Tuskegee nursing students. They're coming down from Tuskegee to Atlanta. I'm going to spend the weekend with them. I won't be able to make the office party. Being the gentleman that I am, I said, what a shame. I'm not going to have these 2 young co-eds not be able to enjoy the office party. Being the generous person that I am, I said, I need you to come to the office party tonight. Bring your sister and bring her roommate, who are Tuskegee college students. And they're good looking. And lo and behold, the 3 of them show up, and they are good looking. Spark up a roommate. I spark up a conversation with the sisters, with my employee's sister's roommate, is a Tuskegee. She's from Northport, Alabama. She's a senior, getting ready to finish her nursing degree at Tuskegee. We spark up a conversation. We exchange contact information. And lo and behold, it worked out perfect. Her senior year, she had to do clinicals, and she did her clinicals at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. So that meant she was going to be from Tuskegee. She was going to be in Atlanta. Good news is I was busy with the business. She was busy trying to finish up school. We go to the Dollar movie every Friday night.
The Dollar movie, you said?
Dollar movie. That's when you could go to the movie to see movies that were out for six months. They weren't new releases, but they were out. But you could still go to the movie for $1. And so we go to the Dollar movie, and that was our thing. And then this kind of takes us to. So she invited me to Alabama to spend Christmas with her family. And remember, I'm from Wisconsin. She's from Alabama. And frankly, I'd never been to Alabama. My dad, I knew, was from Alabama. His people were from Alabama. I literally thought, and this is in 1990, I'm thinking, I'm going to Alabama. Bull Connor is going to be waiting at the border. He's going to have his hoses, his dogs. And boy, the last thing I need is a flat tire or something on my way to Alabama. And so I check the tires, I leave daylight, and I'm not going to get caught up in the billy clubs that John Lewis and team got caught up in. And I tell my mom, she says, you be careful in Alabama. That's a whole other thing down there. And so I get there, and of course, it's nothing like I thought. Everybody's nice. Everybody's calling me sir. Everybody's calling my wife ma'am. I get to my wife's home. She has 2 siblings. And this is literally like, her family could be like a Hallmark movie, right? Christmas movie. Family's tight, lots of love, grandma, uncles, aunts, cousins. I go to the Christmas, man. I'm literally 30 people there, exchanging gifts, cooking, hugging. But I never had anything like that, you know? We never had anything like that. Just me and my mom and my 3 brothers. That's it. There was no extended grandma family. There was no man, husband, opening gifts. We didn't even go through that. We didn't even have that exercise. This was under the tree, opening gifts, hugging, gag gifts, dinner, grandmas, literally 10 aunts and uncles, cousins, jam-packed kids running around. And I'm like, geez, I've never seen anything like this before. And this reminded me of Curtis. His wife was from LaGrange, Georgia, and she had a Southern accent. And my wife was from small town Alabama. And again, Black family, parents been married now 50, 60 years. Back then it was 30 years. Grandparents married 75 years. It's like, man, stuff actually happens. This stuff actually exists. And so I'm making all these mental notes saying, man, this is what I'm trying to. And so you talk about breaking the chain. My grandparents were divorced. My parents were divorced. And let's just be frank. Kids that come from divorced parents. It's just go to any prison and say how many people here had their father in the house, and none of them raised their hand. And so my grandparents, my dad's parents were divorced, left him to be raised by his grandmother. My parents were divorced when I was a kid. And I'm like, it stops here. I'm not doing that no more. I'm not having a fractured family. I'm not having my kids' teen pregnancies in prison. And I'm not saying that that stuff doesn't happen in married families, but we all know statistically it's less likely. And fast forward, I've been married to around 30 years. And I tell her, I mean, you have your ups and downs, but I tell my kids, you know, it didn't come from me. So I'm not, divorce stopped with me. And so I didn't pass that gene along to you guys. I'm not passing that gene. And till death do us part, I came to faith by hanging out with my wife. I really didn't have that wasn't part of my equation. Dibbled and dabbed along the way, but my wife's parents. Church every Sunday, pray before meals, celebrate all the holidays, birthdays, baptisms, Thanksgiving. Her parents at every baptism, every dedication. I never had any of that. Every basketball game, every track meet, every play, every recital. And so I wanted that, and it ain't easy, we all know. But seeing her family and saying, okay, I'm going to learn from her dad, I'm going to learn from Curtis Craig. And when you have kids, how you become a father. I don't know. I didn't have There was no man in my house. So Curtis Craig, go back to him, seeing that dynamic. And Curtis Craig's still married to his wife, probably like 40 years now. And seeing that dynamic, saying, okay, I'm going to duplicate that, see him. And I specifically, once I went to Alabama to visit my wife's family and saw all of that family structure, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, I said, okay, she's the one.
Yeah.
She's the one. And I'm going to bring my grit and street and take her love and family, and together we're going to create something here.
Yeah, man, that's an amazing story, and things that people probably take for granted. Just a Christmas family gathering that's extended, where you have that's that Southern thing. My mom's from Mississippi, my dad's from Atlanta. My mom's the youngest of 18 children. I could be related to you. I don't know, but there were always gatherings, and there were always aunts and uncles, and oh, that's your cousin. You don't know? I didn't know that was my cousin. But it's part of the heritage of African Americans that needs to be told more. That so people can really know within the community that this is possible and it is real. But you said something that I thought was very powerful. You decided that divorce stops right here.
Mm-hmm.
You were committed to that. And that's the first step. And like you said, it's not easy. And you have ups and downs like everyone else, but you're committed. And that's really important. Before we get to your faith, because I think it's so important in this day and age to not be afraid to share your faith and do what you do. You have been really successful. I didn't know how successful until I read the book. Did you work with Ed Butler in Kansas City?
Ed, he still works with us right now.
Oh, did it? Okay.
He didn't work with Kansas City, works with us in this new company that we formed and actually in the process of selling. He works here right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He leads all of our sales efforts.
Well, he was a salesman aficionado. I remember Ed from Enroad. So if you tell him I said hi. And thanks for not calling me to be a part of the business. But anyway, your ability to turn around companies and make them profitable and everything, that's great. The thing that stuck with me was you included all of the employees as part of your process and made sure that they were financially rewarded for the work that they did. I want you to talk about your philosophy on building a team and rewarding a team, because I think that is unique, and you have changed the generational wealth aspect of many people by using this model. So just share a little bit about that.
Sure. And I'll intertwine the faith piece. So I was always, like I said, man, since I was a kid, I always had this financial thing. And I became a Christian, and I said, okay, I'm going to commit my children to my faith. I'm going to commit my marriage to my faith. But I can commit my money to my faith. That's separate. We're going to keep that separate, God. You don't know I know you get the relationship, you get family, but you don't understand the capitalism system. So I'm going to keep running the money thing my way, but I'm going to run everything else your way. And so I committed to my family. We're going to pray. We're going to be in church. We're going to be giving. We're going to be intentional. We're going to see our faith daily. The money piece, we're going to keep it separate over here. And the money piece wasn't always just getting right. I was doing fine, paying the bills, but it was never right. And I remember hearing a service about money, and I'm like, oh, here's preacher, he just wants the money. And basically the point was, it's all his. It's all his. Because you can't say, I wouldn't be anything without him. It's all his. He gave it to you. He blessed you with it. And so I literally, man, I said, I got a problem. And I'm going to not only live out my faith, but I'm going to include the financial. And if you go through the Bible, it's weird, right? There's 2,000 references to money.
Yes.
More than any other subject. So I'm like, why is that? Duh, he's trying to get your attention, brother. And memory said you can't have it both ways. You're going to be of this world with your money, or you're going to be over here. Phil, I appreciate you put your family and all this stuff over here, but you need to get the rest of it over here. So I literally one day committed to, okay, I got to stop doing this. And it all came together. I became CEO for the first time in this company that was really struggling. They were on the verge of going out of business. And this private equity firm bought it, included me as a partner in buying the company. Never done anything like this before. I put some of my personal money in. And then I got a percentage of the gain. So whatever we gained, I got a percentage of it. And then the way they structured it, they said, okay, I'm going to give you 10 to 12% of the gain, and you can split it up however you want. And I said, okay, I'm taking some as a CEO. And I could have took more, but I went to him and I said, I want to give some to all the employees. Every employee, you're a janitor, you get a piece of the action. Nobody really does that. I said, I know you said you're going to give me 10, 12. I'm assuming you're going to let me do whatever I want to do with my 10, 12, right? So I took 2.5% of it. I said, let's give it to employees. They don't have to put any money in. They don't have to sign anything. We're just going to give it to them. And so I took my piece, and my piece would have been 4, but I think I ended up getting 3 of the points because I gave some of mine so we could do this one employee. And I literally, man, took that document, threw it under my mattress, didn't look at it. If the day we sold, if you had said, how much is that paperwork? I said, I don't have a clue because I'm putting God first and I'm putting my money, my resources. So we gave some to the employees. I came in every day and said, first, I need to be a good steward. This is someone's money that they've entrusted me with. So first and foremost, whether you don't care where your priorities are, you got to be a good steward with the assets that you've been given. Okay, and be a good steward. 2, you got to take care of your customers. You're buying a service, you got to take care of them. Shame on you if they're paying you every month and you're not providing the service you said you were going to provide it. You lied if you didn't. Okay, I got to take care of my customers. And 3, I got to take care of my employees. We got these employees, they're counting on us, they're trying to pay their bills, send their kids to college, and we need to take care of the employees. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I came every morning, I'm taking care of my investors, I'm taking care of my customers, I'm taking care of my employees. I was terrified that they were entrusting, at this time it was $85 million that the business was worth. Oh man, they trust me. I was terrified. Some inner city knucklehead album thief is in charge of an $85 million business. Very short order, we made $100 million. So we turned that $85 million, we turned it into a $100 million profit. Now, the good news is we turned it a $100 million profit. We borrowed 55 of the 85. Right? We paid the bank back the 55 of the 85. So we only put in 30 and we made $100 million profit, one of the record profits in the space. My piece of that, I had a little over 3%. I got $3.5 million for that. The employees split $2.5 million. So $10,000 checks, $50,000 checks, $30,000 checks, 25. This was a small deal in comparison now.
Sure.
And man, people coming up crying and I can get a new car. And man, I'm sitting there boohooing. And I can tell you for the first time, I literally was more excited about that woman, single call center employee answering the phone, or that guy that's climbing in some attic selling cable, coming to me saying, thanks for this $23,000 than I was that $3.5 million I had just got. That didn't even, you would think I hit the lottery, right? I hit the lottery. I paid off all my debt, decided to live debt free, gave away a big chunk of it, and went back to work. And the next deal, we made hundreds of millions of dollars. The deal after that, we made hundreds of millions of dollars. The deal after that, we made $1 billion. And so my piece is just getting out of control. And I'm like, you get an athlete type checks, right? And you're like, what do you mean? I'm taking care of my investors. I'm taking care of my employees. I'm taking care of customers. And this is the benefit. So we've paid out out of these 4 or 5 deals that we've done. We've paid out tens of millions of dollars. We made several folks multi-millionaires. But the most satisfying, I have to say, is that single mom, that young guy getting that $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 check, life-changing money for them at that age. If you're making you're making $14 an hour, you get a $25,000 check. That's meaningful. Yes. That's life-changing. That's buying a home, down payment on a home. And so anyway, so that's been the most, I haven't totally conquered the money thing. It still kind of goes around my head. I have been a lot more generous. And I'm going back to BOP and folks that helped me along the way, trying to be generous and thank you for pouring into me and let me pour back into you. But I've tried to stay relatively modest and not get caught up in materialism. Like I said, I go back and forth, but I try to moderate and just try to be a generous and a good steward with the resources that God has blessed me with.
That's a great formula for success, and you will continue to have success because you are giving to those, I call them the working poor, and others, and all the things that you do. Our time is up, and I know you've got to run. You have a daughter, Alana. Is that the proper way to say her name?
Yeah.
That was born with special needs. I always want to give people an opportunity to share what that has meant to them, the things that she has taught you. My listeners know I'm in a wheelchair, and I've been in it now for 4 decades. And it's a real challenge every day. And some days you don't want to deal with it, but you have to. What has your daughter meant to you and your family?
Hopefully I don't get emotional on this part. Fortunately, when she was born, she was the fourth of four. And so by then my faith was strong. And so she has Down syndrome. So there's no cure. Ain't no doctor, ain't no formula, ain't no medicine. This is lifelong. It's forever. It's an extra chromosome. You'd think that would have meant extra, especially and more powers kind of thing, but it's physically disability. And man, and I have to admit, the first 6 months I didn't admit it. I don't deal with it. I'm showing her pictures. I didn't talk about it. I said, yeah, she's doing fine. I remember, man, I was literally in the shower, fell to the floor in the shower, and just said, God, you gave her to us. I need your help. I can't. There ain't no doctor. I can't. My money. Think about it. You got all this money. That money ain't gonna help you now. And that goes back to when me not turning over my money. Oh, what that money gonna do for you now, buddy? Ain't no cure. Ain't no doctor. Ain't no solution. You're going to deal with this. And it's a lifetime kind of commitment. So fortunately, I was strong in my faith and just embraced her. And I give my wife all the credit. I mean, she had her in every therapy, every class, And the other thing is she got older. My wife she wouldn't put her in the special needs stuff. She'd put her in regular. She'd put her in with other kids. So when there was a Christmas play, my wife, yep, she's in the Christmas play. And the people would kind of be like, oh, you saying she can't be in the Christmas play? I don't know. She's in the Christmas play. And so she just made sure she was inclusive. And to this day, so it was a lifetime journey. She's high functioning thanks to, like I said, all the interventions that we've had. She still lives with us now. We're trying to get her to independent living. But she went to Clemson University in their special needs program, lived on campus in the dorm with all the other students, was away from us on her own. If you would have told me when she was born that she would go to Clemson and be living in the dorm by herself, I would have been like, what you smoking? You don't understand this diagnosis. But the biggest thing that she gave is the compassion that I now have for others. I don't see a person in a wheelchair. I don't see a person that's struggling. I don't see an old woman trying to put her bag on a plane without me empathizing and being helpful where I can, financially, physically. When I'm on a plane, and this is from her, when I'm on a plane and I see any woman trying to I jump out of my seat, and I would not have that trait if it was not for her. And when I travel, she says, Dad, have a safe trip. I love you. I'll see you when you get back. The other three that don't have special needs, I'm like, can I get a call? Sometimes I go, wait a minute. Christmas, great example. Everybody has 5 gifts, right? One opens my phone. I didn't want the 13. I wanted the 14. Why'd I get the 14? She opened one of her 5. She doesn't get to the other 4 because she's thanking you for the one. But you got 4 more things. Now this teddy bear does it all. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. If there's 4 cookies, and I'll leave it at this, if there's 4 cookies left and there's 5 of us, she's going to say, you guys go ahead. Most kids will say, I want 2 when you get none. So she just has this innate compassion. She sees my wife upset about something, she's going to go over and rub her back. And so the gift that I'll give you just a quick example. I don't want to go on with this, but just tells you my mindset. A young couple called us one day and said, we think our child has Down syndrome. We've had the test and it came back positive. So I'm like, oh, come over. Let me introduce you to a line. This is going to be great. No. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, yeah, you got to see. And then they called us back after the baby was born and said, no, it's a false positive. The kid doesn't have Down syndrome. So I was kind of, oh, darn it. That's too bad. Try next time. Maybe you guys will be fortunate enough to get this blessing. I wouldn't change it. The lessons, the life, my compassion, my giving, my commitment, all that stuff just drains out from her.
Man, you did all that without getting emotional, and I got like all these tears in my eyes, man. So I'm like, oh my God, that's just remarkable. It's everything else is why I wanted you on the podcast. Not just, you've done well in business. I've had other successful business people on the podcast, but you have another dimension to you that I thought that I still think is unique and God ordained for this season. And I was just to say this to you, at the best is still yet to come. Before we sign off, I always have our guests respond to 3 words with whatever comes to mind to them. And those words are perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. I'm going to have you do the same thing. I'm just going to say one word, tell me what comes to mind, and then we'll get through those, and then we'll close it out. Perspective.
I think perspective is, we talked about it, right? Because my perspective was just so narrow. It was just my neighborhood, my narrow view of opportunity, potential, what's out there. And through those relationships, my perspective has widened, right? There's more to this than just this narrow. And I think that's what happens with a lot of kids in the inner city, right? It's just all you see. This is it. And so I would say my perspective has widened through those experiences.
Perseverance.
Perseverance is clearly getting caught and handcuffed to those things and struggling at Market High School and trying to figure out this IBM thing. But just like you said, just this $85 million transaction, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into here? And just perseverance, saying, no, I do belong here, and no, I can do it. Why can't I do it? And so that perseverance was obviously through those experiences.
And lastly, partnerships.
Partnerships. I've been fortunate. A lot of people look at private equity as these evil, greedy, money hungry, but I think I've influenced my private equity owners to give money, to share the wealth with every employee. And I've done it every time. Every time I said, look, I'll do this, but we sharing it with everyone. But they said, okay, fine. And so I've partnered with I've been fortunate to have good private equity partners that are ethical, integrity. We create great businesses. We're not firing people. We're not laying people off. We're growing them, investing, sharing the wealth. And so those partnerships, and you got to be careful about, and I have been very careful about who I'm partnering with. I won't partner with someone and I lay that all out front. This is who I am. I don't cheat. I don't go outside the lines. I'm right down the fairway. You got to share with employees. And so you got to be careful about picking your partners. And just because there's a shiny object, it may not necessarily mean that's the right partner for you, including my partnership with my wife.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's the greatest partner you got right there. Look, this has been more than fascinating. This has been outstanding and on many levels. And you have broken a lot of chains. Divorce, poverty, education, financially, it goes on and on. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for you. You definitely, clearly have been gifted with wealth creation. And don't ever back off of that, because it's a gift. Everybody can't do what you do. And that's why you're doing it the way you do it, because it was a God-given gift that allows for you now to understand giving at a next level. And as long as God can get it to you and through you, he'll keep giving it to you. Congratulations. Thank you for being on the podcast today. If people want to get a hold of you or find you or whatever, what's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to get me is on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn.
Okay.
The book is on Amazon. I didn't really only wrote the book for my family. 100 years from now, when some great grandkids said, who was that knucklehead uncle or great granddaddy I had, they can go and pick it up.
Look, I think the book is great. Thank you, Phil, for being such a great guest today. This is David Cooks, reminding you until the next episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
Perspective is everything. If you're walking down a road with giant buildings all around you, you might look at these buildings and go, wow, they're so huge, they're so massive, they're unscalable, they're unclimbable, they're so much bigger than I am. But then you get in a helicopter and you fly on top of them, they look tiny, minuscule, and itty bitty.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
Jeremy Alexander Newsom.
Meaning what problems you might feel are insurmountable, other people have already accomplished or overcome. And so when you sit down and just realize that you have the capability to change your perspective, you change your perspective, you change everything. Everything in your life. If you want change your perspective.
Paralysis to purpose.